This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Madagascar's Rajulina calls for unity as court upholds election win. DR Congo braces for election results after commission meets overnight. And the World Bank predicts smaller economic growth for sub-Saharan Africa in 2019. You're watching Africa Live. A warm welcome from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour. In business, Kenya's Safaricom rolls out an overdraft facility for its M-Pesa users. And in sport, hail the Egyptian football king. Fans react to Mohamed Salah's fate as African Player of the Year. The new president of Madagascar, Andry Rajoelina, has appealed for unity after Monday's High Court ruling confirmed his victory. Rajoelina also thanked his runoff opponent, Marc Ravalomanana, for reaching out to congratulate him. The court ruling followed Ravalomanana's rejection of the December 19th election results and claims of voter fraud. Now, Andry Rajoelina, a successful businessman and one-time DJ, had made it his political mission to take on Marc Ravalomanana, and now he sits at the helm. Let's take a quick look at his profile.
Andry Rajoelina started off as a disc jockey. He comes from a relatively wealthy family and set up his first enterprise at the age of 19, an events production firm he called Show Business. Rajoelina went to organize an annual music festival bringing together local and international artists. Within a decade, it was attracting crowds of about 50,000 people. As the capital's top party planner, Rajoelina became famous, and he played that popularity well into political power. Rajoelina was elected mayor of Antananarivo in 2007, defeating Marc Ravalomanana. In 2009, backed by the military, he led popular protests that drove the then-president Ravalomanana into exile. And then Rajoelina took the presidency, which he held until 2014. At the time, he was the world's youngest head of government. However, critics claim he was slow to tackle corruption, which was endemic in Madagascar. In this election, he faced off two other ex-presidents, Hairy Rajaonarimampianina and Marc Ravalomanana, to try and win the heart of the people. The outcome of the first election led to a runoff where Rajoelina won 55% of the vote. The Constitutional Court in the country has now declared Rajoelina as the winner, rejecting all complaints over the result. He now holds the highest seat in the country once again, with many expectant of what he will make of his second chance at reforming one of the world's poorest countries. Nolmakugu, CGTN.
Let's head to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Electoral Commission met all night and into Wednesday morning ahead of an announcement of results from the presidential election that could come later in the day. Riot police were deployed in front of the Commission headquarters in the capital, Kinshasa. The elections, postponed 3 times over the last 2 years, were to choose a successor to President Joseph Kabila, but early results from the December 30th election due last Sunday have been pushed back.
There have been mounting calls both locally and internationally for the Electoral Commission to release election results. On Tuesday, opposition candidate Martin Fayulu called on the electoral body to announce the results as soon as possible.
The Independent National Electoral Commission is the only competent institution to announce the results in conformity with the electoral law.
The Observer Mission has alleged electoral malpractices in the elections, and according to the DRC-based Simocell, 52 cases of irregularities in 101 centers were noted across the country. DRC has 179 voting centers.
Simocell witnessed 52 cases of irregularities that we judge to be major. 4 cases of witnesses being stopped from signing of the tally. 2 of these cases were in Senkuru, 1 in Kasai and 1 in South Kivu. We also had 20 cases of falsifying of results on the tally, 7 in Manyema and 7 others in Senkuru.
The Catholic Observer Mission also alleged electoral malpractices. However, the mission has pledged to respect the laws guiding elections in the country.
Je crois que la moindre des choses, c'est dénoncer. Parce que
I think the least we can do is to denounce the irregularities, because as an observer mission, what we have said is what we observed, based on what was posted from the tallies that the observers had access to. At the same time, we're going to respect the law which forbids us from and which only authorizes the Election Commission to publish the results of the votes and results.
Donc, nous allons en même temps aussi respecter la loi.
On Tuesday, the ruling coalition accused the Catholic Church and Martin Fayulu's Lamuka coalition of stalking election violence. This followed the announcement by Catholic bishops that they knew who has won the elections. DRC is on the edge as the world awaits to see the country's first smooth transition of power. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
The World Bank is warning of increasing risks for the world economy. In its annual assessment of global prospects, the bank indicated that ongoing trade issues between China and the US were having an adverse impact on the economy. Not surprisingly, perhaps, with a report ominously entitled Darkening Skies, it says global economic growth has weakened, trade tensions remain high, and risks to the outlook have increased. The report projected a drop in global growth by about 0.1% in 2019, with a similar fall in the following 2 years. It says much of this will be down to the performance of the American economy, which it forecast to drop from 2.9% last year to 1.7% in the next couple of years. So where does Africa fit in all of this? We're joined in studio by David Owiro, an economic analyst here in Nairobi. So, David, despite the prediction of a slower global growth rate for the global economy, the report is also predicting that emerging economies and emerging markets and developing economies are expected to pick up pace. What's the outlook for Africa?
Yes, Africa indeed is projected to at least edge forward in a positive manner. We saw the year closed on at least our commodity commodities dropped, and the outlook is for that to reverse. So if we look at Nigeria, Angola, which are heavily dependent on natural resources such as oil and so forth, there's actually a projection for them to perform much better. And so the expectation is that Nigeria will perform 2.something% for the year GDP growth. The same for Southern Africa. We know Southern Africa has had a lot of challenges owing to fiscal pressures and the challenges of their state-owned enterprises. And so we see that this year they're projected to grow at about 1.3%, which is an upward trend comparing with last year. And if you look at these other non-resource economies such as Kenya, Ethiopia, Ghana, and so forth, we see a diversification and a resilience in the economies. And so those are projected to perform all above 4%, which actually put all of sub-Saharan Africa, the average for sub-Saharan Africa will be higher than 4%, at least what is being projected.
But the irony, though, is that despite this projection of a positive outlook, I should say, in terms of economic growth for Africa, the report also says that these countries are not likely to make any progress when it comes to poverty reduction. And so the question is, what is frustrating those efforts?
Well, we know there's a big challenge with poverty, the high inequality rates in Africa, of course, and we know poverty is a very complicated problem. It has to be addressed from a social side as well as from an economic side. And much of the political systems that Africa has gone with have not been able to adequately provide support for the highly unemployed. We've got a young workforce without work, and the fiscal pressures do not allow for extensive social protection measures. And so what we do expect, of course, is a fiscal consolidation as countries work towards reducing their budget deficits, but also to have a growing handle on growing the economy so that the employment opportunities that can arise with GDP growth do actually manifest.
Right. You mentioned about this positive outlook for sub-Saharan Africa. They're expected to grow the economies by slightly over 4% this year. But there's also concern about the rising debt of these countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Is there a likelihood that we could see a scenario where they're unable to repay those debts?
Well, that scenario indeed is likely, but as we know, the issue of debt is partly a fiscal management problem, and we are seeing a lot of fiscal consolidation, so a lot of them are trying to reduce their deficits, and so there is austerity measures being introduced in most of these countries. And so perhaps that might not result in defaults if indeed they do perform that, they do continue with those reforms. At the same time, we're also seeing an effort to widen the tax base so that tax collection, domestic revenue mobilization can increase and perhaps go towards addressing some of those debt obligations.
Right. And looking at the World Bank itself, we've seen some interesting developments, especially this week with the unexpected resignation of the president. But how much has the institution achieved, especially here in Africa, under his leadership?
Well, we know for a long time World Bank has the perception from the Africans' side, at least in the leadership, political leadership, has been that World Bank is sort of a big brother who extends support with conditionalities, and so it's not a very positive perception. And so, but the World Bank's performance is something that has been known. We know that World Bank projects haven't had the intended impacts in the past for Africa, and it's mostly been marred by very negative reports in terms of the liberalization measures that they were insisting for countries to initiate. The privatization of many state-owned enterprises hasn't led to the kind of impact that was expected in terms of rejuvenation of those companies and firms, and actually revamping of production economies within these countries. And so, for me, I would say I would entirely attribute it to the institution rather than to the person, because we know, indeed, sometimes in a big institution such as the World Bank, it's difficult to institute the kind of reform that the World Bank actually needs. Unfortunately, as Africans, we are yet to see the kind of reform that one would expect and that African leaders have called for with regard to those IMF and World Bank institutions.
All right. David Owira, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Now to Sudan, and hundreds of protesters staged what they called a martyrs rally to honor those killed in anti-government protests last month. Protests have rocked the country since unrest broke out over a government decision to raise the price of bread. Authorities say at least 19 people have been killed during the demonstrations, but rights group Amnesty International has put the death toll at 37. More than 800 protesters have been arrested across the country. In Egypt, the country has beefed up security around the capital, Cairo, following the weekend blast that killed a police officer. The officer died while attempting to defuse the explosive. The bomb was found near a church in an eastern Cairo suburb less than 2 days before Egypt's Christians celebrated the Coptic Christmas. Egyptian security forces have for years battled Islamist insurgents who have attacked Coptic Christians, tourists and security personnel. Still in Egypt, the German government is seeking the whereabouts of its 2 citizens who have been reported missing in the country. The 2 men have German and Egyptian citizenships. The German Foreign Ministry says it takes very seriously the disappearance of its 2 citizens. The German embassy is in contact with local authorities pressing for clarification. And for more on this, we're joined by CGTN's Adel Mahri. He's live for us in Cairo. Adel, what more can you tell us about this incident? It's reported that one disappeared after an encounter with authorities in Cairo airport.
Well, let me first give you a quick breaking in update on the security story that you've just mentioned. The Egyptian authorities have just announced that they have arrested 4 suspects, the prime suspects behind that bomb. Now back to the main story that you were asking me about, the 2 German citizens. According to German authorities, they are 2 different incidents, 2 Egyptians, both from a German mother and an Egyptian father, 2 separate families. Within about 2 weeks, both of them have been found disappeared. The first one was 18 years old and the other 23. One of them was coming to Cairo with his brother, and the authorities, according to German sources, while entering Cairo airport, the authorities have stopped him, and they allowed his brother to enter the country, but he did not go through. And since then, the whereabouts of him has not been known. The other Egyptian German citizen was on his way to Cairo. He took a transit flight to Luxor, south of the country, and after landing in Luxor, according to his father, all communications with him have been lost, and it's been about 3 weeks since they last have heard of him. They don't know if he made it to Cairo, if he's still in Luxor, or even if he's alive or not. That's the two different stories, and so far the Egyptian government has not officially responded or announced or even confirmed the incidents.
The German government says it's been investigating the incidents for days now. How have the Egyptian authorities reacted to this?
We have no official statement from the Egyptian government yet, nothing from the Foreign Ministry or even the Interior Ministry. But as you said, the German government confirmed that there is cooperation going on from the Egyptian side. Other than that, nothing has been officially announced from the Egyptian side yet.
And Adel, all of these comes as Egypt struggles to lift its tourism industry. What kind of impact is this likely to have on the tourism sector? Is it likely, perhaps, that we can get security assurances given by the government to validate that it is okay for tourists to visit the country?
It will all depend, Peninah, on how the events unfolded and the details that will be released in the coming days, whether it's from the Egyptian side or even the German side. What we know so far does not involve any terrorism acts or any abduction. At least so far nothing has been pointing or announced in that regards, which may not be a security concern. There might be politics involved, we still don't know. Both of them are Egyptian German citizens, so it is, if there are any suspicions around them, these two Egyptians, the Egyptian government has full right for them, as they are Egyptian citizens, to arrest them or investigate with them. Again, this has not also been announced yet. But what may have affected, or the main concern that could have affected tourism, is the previous incidents that we've seen in the past 2 weeks with the bomb threats happening in Cairo. But so far, no major shift in the reservations coming to Cairo has been reported.
All right, Adel, thank you very much for that update. Adel Mahroui live in Cairo. And this is Africa Live. We're taking a short break. Straight ahead. Suspicious packages sent to Melbourne consulates in Australia. And 3-month screening process of foreign nationals begins in South Sudan.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's head to Australia, where the police are investigating several suspicious packages sent to foreign embassies and consulates in the cities of Canberra and Melbourne. Authorities say the packages are being examined and the surroundings of the premises checked. Several consulates in Melbourne were evacuated. Local media say the US, British and Indian missions are among the affected, but the police did not specify them. There are no immediate reports of any harm. The incident happened after a suspicious package was intercepted at the Argentinian consulate in Sydney on Monday. And now to the latest on the U.S. government shutdown. President Donald Trump says there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. He made the remark during a primetime TV address to convince Americans that he needs billions of dollars from Congress for his long-promised border wall. Democrats then fired back immediately after. CGTN's Mark Fons has the story.
Trump still wants his wall.
Tonight, I am speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border. The federal government remains shut down for one reason, and one reason only, because Democrats will not fund border security.
Shortly after his address, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer gave their rebuttals. They accused the president of spreading misinformation.
The president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall.
So our suggestion is a simple one. Mr. President, reopen the government and we can work to resolve our differences over border security. But end this shutdown now.
Trump appeared willing to continue seeking a solution to the impasse with Congress. This comes after he hinted for days that he might declare a national emergency as a first step toward bypassing Congress and directing money for the wall. If such an emergency is declared, the president will be able to control internet traffic, freeze assets, or even deploy troops to, quote, restore order. In the U.S., the president can unilaterally announce a national emergency, and once it's declared, neither Congress nor the courts can do much to rein in the president. But can declaring a national emergency be justified in this case? Historian and writer Rick Schenkman doesn't think so.
He's trying to ramp up the rhetoric because if he can convince Americans that we are having a national crisis, then like an authoritarian dictator, he can announce, we've got a crisis, I'm going to ignore what the Congress is doing, and I'm going to use the military to build my wall.
What will Trump do? Only time will tell. Mark Fontes, CGTN.
South Africa's ruling party's president Cyril Ramaphosa says the government party is determined more than ever to implement the policy of land expropriation without compensation. Ramaphosa was delivering the party's January 8th statement in the coastal city of Durban, plotting the way forward for the ANC. CGTN's Zulisa Jamila has more.
January 8 is the date that marks the ANC's birthday. The party is turning 107 years this year. ANC supporters from across the country gathered here to mark the occasion and hear the annual January 8 statement. This is a key event in South Africa's political calendar. The annual gathering also serves as a rallying call for ANC supporters to participate in the party's programs for the year. These celebrations come amid ongoing infighting within the former liberation movement. There's also been widespread speculation that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is at loggerheads with former President Jacob Zuma. Zuma was asked by his party to resign early last year before he could finish his term. Ramaphosa dedicated the opening of his January 8 address to reassure ANC supporters of his good relationship with the former president.
Many people are saying I'm going to meet with the former president to scold him. I don't know where that comes from. I want to reassure you that Zuma and I are united and work together.
Zuma accompanied Ramaphosa to this rally in an area known to be his stronghold. Ramaphosa then highlighted the party's achievements over the past 25 years since ANC came to power, and acknowledged that over the past few years, the party has been dealing with infighting, factionalism, and disunity.
We've heard the voices of South African people from all walks of life who have spoken to us and who have said that they want a strong ANC, they want a united ANC, and they want an ANC which is going to demonstrate to the whole nation that it has leaders who are working together. And we accept those criticisms, and we have heard our people.
president noted that the one unifying issue within the party is the matter of land redistribution. South African lawmakers have agreed to the principle of land expropriation without compensation and will review the constitution to cater for this.
With that policy, a policy which we are going to implement, others are criticizing us. They're saying we won't actually implement the policy. We are going to implement that policy, whether people like it or not. The land will return to our people.
Ramaphosa also highlighted that the party is now seized with the matter of growing the economy. South Africans will head to the polls later this year to elect their representatives in national and provincial government in the country's 6th democratic elections. The ANC has started to intensify its electioneering as it launches its manifesto on Saturday. Yudhisan Jamela for CGTN in Durban, South Africa.
On to Somalia, where regional lawmakers have picked a new president in Puntland, which is a semi-autonomous state in northern Somalia. The region is already battling two militant groups, and as Abdulaziz Bailey reports, the new leader has a huge task ahead.
It's the 5th election to take place in Puntland since it was formed 2 decades ago. The elections attracted 21 candidates, including the incumbent Abdiweli Mohammed Ali. 66 lawmakers from the regional parliament, among them one female legislator, casted their votes in Garowe, the administrative capital of Puntland, amid heightened security.
The results are as follows. General Assad Osman Abdullahi, 31 votes. Said Abdullahi Dabi, 35 votes. I hereby declare Said Abdullahi Dabi as the new Puntland president for a period of 5 years, from January 2019 to January 2024.
Mohammed won in the 3rd round, defeating Assad Osman Abdullahi, who served as the intelligence chief for the autonomous region. The incumbent was eliminated in the 1st round.
We are united as Puntland, and we will remain united. Nothing can break us.
Before his election, Mohammed served as a planning minister in the central government. An economist by profession, analysts believe he will address the region's immense challenges.
We have entered a new page today, one that needs public support in rebuilding Puntland and Somalia. The election is officially over. I thank all those who competed against me, and it is my hope that we will work together.
Puntland has a population of close to 3 million people with improved infrastructure and several transit hubs, including a key port and 3 major airports. Its mountainous terrain has also been a safe haven for extremist militants. Al-Shabaab and pro-ISIL have for years maintained a huge presence in Puntland, launching deadly raids on regional forces and targeted assassinations, mostly in the port city of Bosaso. US drones have helped push back the militants, who have in turn resorted to taxing major companies as a lifeline to sustain their operations. Mohammed will now serve a 5-year term as the region's president. His predecessor suspended ties with Mogadishu, accusing it of undermining regional authorities. For now, it's unclear if the new leader will change course and work alongside the federal government or follow in the footsteps of his predecessor. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
In South Sudan, the government has launched a process to register all foreign nationals living in the country. Juba says the process will last for up to 3 months. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
South Sudan's government says the registration is to figure out just how many foreign nationals are living and working in the country. The Ministry of Interior says the data collected would also help in fighting transnational crime, and added that people without documents or with expired documents will only be asked to get valid papers and won't be punished retrospectively.
It is according to the law of migration and nationality, and is also this is the same that people are doing in the world. Any country, you have to target the alien who are living there to know these are living with the legal document. Those who will not have any single document, they will be legalized. They will be asked to legalize their document.
Foreigners in South Sudan are mainly from East African countries like Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. Many of them are either traders or they work in the hospitality industry. The government says refugees residing in the country are excluded from the exercise. South Sudan is home to refugees mostly from Sudan and Democratic Republic of Congo, but more than 2 million South Sudanese nationals are also living in different parts of the East African countries as refugees. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
To the Central African Republic, and the head of the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, arrived in the capital, Bangui, on Tuesday. During this 4-day visit, he will be joined by the African Union Commissioner for Peace and Security. Lacroix plans to relaunch the dialogue between the Central African government and the armed groups under the auspices of the African Union Initiative. Lacroix and Cherugi will also meet with President Faustin Archange Touadera, the President of the National Assembly, members of the government, and other Central African political actors.
The year 2019 must be the year of dialogue, must be the year of appeasement, and must be the year of reconciliation. And we are collectively determined to work and spare no effort in this direction.
Jean-Pierre and I decided that our first action for this year 2019 and to find ourselves together in this capital with also the ministers of the region, neighbors of the Central African Republic, to try and give a decisive impetus to the implementation of the African Initiative.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news, Kenya's Safaricom rolls out an overdraft facility for its M-Pesa users. And Uganda's foreign debt scales up to alarming levels.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Kenya's leading telecoms operator, Safaricom, has rolled out an overdraft facility through its mobile money platform, M-Pesa. M-Pesa users can now send money or pay for goods and services when they have insufficient balance in their accounts using Fuliza. The overdraft facility will be available to all 24.2 million M-Pesa users. It also comes at a time when M-Pesa and data services helped buoy its half-year net earnings by 20.2% to $309 million. This underlines the importance of capitalizing on its mobile money services to grow revenues. With Fuliza, M-Pesa users can now get overdrafts of as high as $490 depending on the value of their transactions. The telco's overdraft facility, in partnership with Kenya Commercial Bank and Commercial Bank of Africa, will attract a daily charge of 0.5% of the borrowing as a top-up to enable M-Pesa customers complete transactions. Uganda's Finance Minister Peninah Karibe has defended government borrowing and insists that the debt levels are sustainable. This follows a new report by the Auditor General which indicates that public debt has increased sharply, sparking fears it may become unsustainable. According to the report, Uganda's debt has hit more than $11 billion in 2018, and that's up from $9.1 billion in June 2017. Much of this debt is attributed to ongoing infrastructure development in the transport and energy sectors, as CGTN's Michael Baleka reports.
A new road project takes shape in the capital Kampala. The paved road will rid locals of dusty trucks, but the cost is becoming unsustainable, according to the Auditor General. There is worry that Uganda does not have the capacity to generate adequate revenue to pay back the loans now amounting to over $11 billion.
Our service delivery, the quality will have to go down. And then also the other issue could be that much of the private sector will have to be crowded out. And yet we know that private sector indeed brings in investment, employment and growth.
Uganda owes China more than $400 million and close to $800 million in loans to the World Bank. A big chunk of this money is going towards the development of hydropower dams, roads, and the oil and gas sector. Uganda plans to borrow more money for the oil pipeline, refinery, and the standard gauge railway.
Uganda has continuously borrowed. Our biggest challenge is the trend. It is on an increasing basis.
But the government insists the country is not in debt distress and that it is way below the International Monetary Fund's risky threshold of 50%.
We therefore compare very favorably with the peer countries because most of our debt has been contracted on concessional terms. Please take care of these concession terms. Longer period of repayment, very small interest rate. By the time the loan becomes due for servicing, we're already reaping.
But the Auditor General's report shows that about 50% of the loans may expire by 2020. And this means that increasingly, a bigger portion of the government's tax revenue collection will go to debt repayment. However, government says the economy is expanding fast enough to settle its dues.
So when it is expanding, it means more production. More production means more revenue. It means more exports. More exports means more dollars coming in here. And the time when it comes for me to pay in dollars, I have the dollars.
Even with the growing fears, government will not back down on borrowing, but plans to do so cautiously and selectively, especially for infrastructure development, with intention to grow the economy and boost domestic revenue. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
On to Somalia now, and a move to ban the use of local currency in several regions of the country has had a negative effect on the business community. With lack of new currency, traders have been forced to use the dollar as the official currency, affecting small business owners. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilu has more from Mogadishu.
This is the biggest market in Beledweyne, a strategic town in central Somalia on the border with neighboring Ethiopia. Mobile money is dominant here after the business community banned the use of the local currency. That has had a troubling effect on small business owners in most towns in central Somalia. Traders say the current banknotes in circulation is mostly fake, torn and in a poor state. Fatuma Abshir is a tea vendor in Beledweyne and says the lack of local currency has affected her business.
We prefer transacting using the Somali shilling as compared to mobile money services because we get our money in cash. Clients send the money to a wrong number, others never send it. We have a big problem dealing with mobile money payment.
Farmers too have also been affected by the ban. Farm produce harvested in this region is mostly ferried to Puntland and other central Somali towns that have also abandoned the use of cash payments.
We have a big problem with the absence of the Somali shilling. Every transaction is done using the dollar. This has affected our business and we are appealing to authorities to bring the shilling back.
The only banknotes available in the country is the 1,000 shilling, after the smaller denomination stopped circulating almost 3 decades ago. Authorities have condemned the ban on the Somali currency by the business community, but are not providing any quick solutions. Finance Minister has announced Mogadishu's plans to print new currency, displaying the sample to both local and international media.
Printing money for a country that has no money is a major task. It's a major undertaking. And alone, we could not have done it. We could not dream doing it ourselves. Now we are looking for the cost of printing money, which is not a small amount, $40 million. Just to print your money, $40 million. And that we are close to getting it, securing through the IMF, and we thank them very much all the time, and the international community. We are thinking that very soon there will be currency circulated in this country that are shilling.
Somalia has one of the most active mobile money markets in the world, with telecommunication companies commanding millions of subscribers. The new currency will allow Mogadishu to challenge telecom companies and exert overall authority in the country's economy that has in the past years begun to record major improvements. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Britain's lawmakers have returned from their winter break, preparing to vote next Tuesday on UK Prime Minister Theresa May's controversial Brexit deal with the European Union. Widely regarded as the most significant debate in Britain for decades, May is making last-ditch attempts to save her deal from defeat. Richard Bestick reports from London.
Preparing for a no-deal Brexit. We have a Brexit convoy simulating the kind of upheaval that might follow if Britain crashes out of the EU without a trade deal. Post-Brexit, trucks will be held at this disused airfield to prevent possible tailbacks and highway chaos. To avoid that, May's Brexit agreement with the EU must have parliamentary backing as she works to win over her critics.
We'll be setting out proposals for a greater role for Parliament as we move into the next stage of the negotiations, and we're continuing to work on further assurances, on further undertakings from the European Union.
Brexit is divisive and tempers here are getting frayed. In Parliament, a third of lawmakers, including many from May's own party, demand she rule out a no-deal Brexit. Whatever side of the argument you are, there's little improved since when facing parliamentary defeat, the Prime Minister pulled the last Brexit vote.
I think Theresa May is going to lose the vote.
She's going into a crunch vote, which will be a confidence vote, without the backing of her parliamentary party.
Theresa May is bound to lose that vote, and then all hell is going to break loose.
The Bank of England and the UK Treasury both warn of severe economic harm from a hard Brexit, but agree the UK economy would be small whatever deal is finally agreed. Agreement still far from secure.
And if there's no consensus anywhere, as I think there is, then you've reached that impasse, and what are you going to do? A general election will solve nothing, so there's only one thing to do. Take this back to the British people.
You are not doing Brexit any favours.
What happens after this critical vote next Tuesday will likely shape the future of Britain and its relationship with the powerful European Union on its doorstep for a generation. The trouble is, despite that economic and political significance, we're still in the dark as to how the final acts in this drama will play out. Richard Bestick, CGTN, London.
The world's first offline digital payments application, Nala, has added another accolade to its streak of Global Tech Awards for 2018. The latest recognition makes the Tanzanian fintech company one of the most decorated tech firms in Africa. Its founder, Benjamin Fernandez, left a dream job working for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the US and returned home to build Nala. CGTN's Zenel Kijo has this story.
Yet another global award for Tanzania's Nala. The latest one, which is the Y Combinator Incubator, has seen Nala take home $150,000 to facilitate growth across Africa. The Y Combinator Incubator is a venture investor fund that provides seed funding for startups. Nala is the first mobile money application to work fully without an internet connection, and it's only possible because founder Benjamin Fernandez declined offers from some of the world's top tech firms to return home to pursue his dreams.
That aspect of responsibility got to me, and I started thinking, like, wait, how am I going to go back to give back to the people in Tanzania? And I said, you know what, I can't just talk about it, I got to commit in doing it. It's a big risk.
According to the Tanzanian Communications Regulatory Agency, 50% of Tanzanians actively use mobile money services. The cumbersome process to do transaction has been the same for over a decade. Now the Nala app has simplified the process by making it 7 times faster than the old method, more reliable and secure without needing the internet. The app uses USSD codes, a communications protocol used by GSM cellular telephones to communicate to the mobile network operators' computers.
So we've seen it, we've done a study, and we've seen people have increased the amount of money they're transacting digitally because of the simplicity of using a service like Nala. It's just a simplified interface.
In recent months, Benjamin and the Nala team won the EcoBank Africa FinTech Award, the Apps Africa Award for Disruptive Innovation, and the SeedStar Best Tanzanian Startup of 2018. This has seen Nala become the #1 trending application for finance on the Google Play Store for 120 days in a row. The Nala team says the app has been downloaded over 80,000 times in the last 7 months. They believe it's part of a fintech trend for offline payments being seen across the continent. A FinScope Tanzania report from 2017 finds that 65% of the adult population in Tanzania is formally included to financial service access points. This is a growth of 14% from 2013.
This has been brought about by digital financial services, which have created a mechanism that is easier, quicker, and closer to people. And as a result of that, we've seen a higher uptake of people having financial services that are mainly driven by digital solutions.
Benjamin Fernandez believes that products like Nala will become necessary tools for helping Africans make smarter decisions in personal finance, budgeting, and finally increasing economic productivity for countries that need it most. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. Suffering in silence, we see how one Nigerian woman is helping her country talk about its mental health.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
To Nigeria, and we meet a woman who is leading the fight against stigma associated with mental health. Hawa Ojefo was diagnosed with bipolar and post-traumatic stress in 2015. She has not allowed it to bring her down. Instead, she is using her experience to raise awareness on mental illnesses in a country where 30% of the population is affected. Here's Alexandria Majala with more on that.
In a country where the government says 30% of the population suffer from some form of mental illness and that the national suicide rate is on the rise, there's still considerable stigma around mental health. Hawa Ojefo wants to change that. In 2015, she was diagnosed as bipolar and suffering from post-traumatic stress after being sexually assaulted several years earlier. A friend of hers in the UK suggested she finds a support group.
And I looked around and I didn't find any. And I'm like, you know what? She's like, I just started really. And that was just what I did. I didn't overthink it.
Her group has grown into an initiative called She Writes Woman, which uses a helpline, blog posts and social media to reach people. But the taboo around mental health means Ojefo and other mental health advocates face a tough job.
In Nigeria, I don't think they really do seek for help. Some just die in silence, and some think they can maybe pray off the whole issue and get fine.
Ojefo says her helpline receives a minimum of 100 calls a day. She has leveraged the success of She Writes Woman to start a walk-in clinic where people can receive treatment as well as information. Operating in a country that holds Africa's largest population, this might appear like a small initiative. However, the initiative's success is just but a window to a bigger conversation on mental health in Nigeria. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Moving to Uganda, a local non-governmental organization in the capital Kampala is hoping to keep children off the streets using yoga. Figures from the country's Ministry of Gender and Children Affairs show that between 10 and 20 youngsters become homeless every day and end up on the streets. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
A yoga workout in a Kampala slum.
These street children are on a journey of transformation, and instructors here believe the practice itself and the skills acquired through yoga help keep children out of trouble.
Some of the kids, they normally take substances like marijuana, like tina. They take so many. But what we do, when we train them yoga, we try to remove them their substances in the body, because when you oversweat, we know biologically when you sweat, you can remove some of the bad substances.
On a daily basis, almost 40 children gather here to take part in these yoga sessions. Instructors believe through the practice of yoga, children learn to be responsible citizens, and the discipline taught in these classes helps keep them away from a life of crime. Many of these children taking part in yoga have gradually seen improvements.
Life on the street is hard, but after coming here, I am now feeling better.
This program has been running for 8 months now. Instructors conduct 2 sessions every day to accommodate the growing numbers of attendees, and they are already seeing success.
There are some 2 kids so far whom we have resettled. One is from Lugazi, another is from Chegwegwa. We managed to take them back to their homes, and also secondly, so many sweet kids, like the one who was sleeping there, he was addicted to, he was sniffing, over sniffing, but now I'm so happy that he's no longer and he likes the program.
Local authorities have welcomed the initiative.
Addressing the issue of street children needs a multi-sectoral approach. So anything that comes and can contribute and can help me as commissioner for these children, as a ministry, would welcome such an intervention.
There are currently no credible statistics on the number of street children in Uganda. Some sources have put the figure at around 10,000. Authorities say poverty and lack of proper care from parents and guardians are driving children to the streets. And as these children perfect the art of yoga, it is hoped that they will use the skills acquired here to begin a new life off the streets. Hilary Isga, CGTN, Kampala.
Ahead in sports. Hail the Egyptian football king. Fans react to Mohamed Salah's fit as African Player of the Year. South African female player Thembi Kgatlana beat seasoned names to be named the best player for 2018 at the African Football Awards ceremony. And as CGTN Sadiq Shaban reports, it was another night to remember for Egypt's Mohamed Salah.
Egypt's Mohamed Salah has been voted the African Male Player of the Year for the second year running, beating Gabon's Emerick Aubameyang and Senegal's Sadio Mane.
Honestly, I'm very happy to win it for the second time. And you know, I said before, even I said in a speech there, like when I was young, I always had a dream to win this award. Now I won it twice, so I'm happy about that. But really, I would love to win the African nation in Egypt, especially when you play in home and with your people, and everyone is very excited. So we will do our best to win it in Egypt.
In the Women's Player of the Year category, South Africa's Thembi Kgatlana walked away with the title.
I'm just overwhelmed with everything. I never expected that I'd be at 22 years old, I'd be here in the CAF Awards, scooping African Player of the Year and getting a best goal of 2018.
Mauritania was voted the Male Team of the Year, while Nigeria were declared the best Team of the Year after winning the Women's Cup of Nations. Morocco's coach Javier René was named Coach of the Year, while South Africa's Desiree Ellis won her first major African title, having been named the Women's Coach of the Year.
I'm very lucky, thanks to my federation, my president of federation, and of course my staff. Without them, you can't win anything. And of course my players, because they did very well in 2018, and if I received this award, it's because of them.
The Football Awards congregation marks the end of business for 2018 in African football and officially ushers in the 2019 season. Sadiq Shaban, CGTN in Dakar, Senegal.
Football fans in Egypt have reacted with excitement to Mohamed Salah retaining the Male African Player of the Year award. Here's what they had to say.
All of Egypt is honored by Mohamed Salah. He dedicated this award to the whole of Egypt.
We are all happy, and all Egyptians are happy that Salah was chosen as the best player. We wish him progress.
Still in Egypt, football fans have cautiously welcomed the decision to have the North African country as the host nation of the 2019 finals. Football fans across the country have shown a predominantly positive response, although wary of Egypt's abilities to prepare after years of instability.
Do we truly have the resources needed for the organization? As an Egyptian, I am very happy. I am happy that an event like this is taking place here. The pressing issue will be the next step to come. Will the next step be a positive one? Will it be a step that can benefit football in Egypt? Or, because of the poor condition of the pitches, the lack of an audience and the present security restrictions, things will go badly?
It has come at the right time, to be honest. Football at the moment is not going very well with regards to its audience, security, and the general state of affairs. This, I believe, can greatly boost tourism. I mean, it will help bring Egypt out of its current crisis.
The important thing for me is the condition of the pitches. The Egyptian league is highly pressured. We see matches played at the league every 3 days, and sometimes every 2 days. This affects the condition of the fields. You, therefore, need to improve the conditions of the fields. You need to be particularly ready by the middle of June.
Still in football, and the semi-finals of the English Football League Cup